Ready? Picking us up?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Us up now.
All right. We're back. We are the Riders of Brohan. This is the Robcast. I am Prometheus. With me here, my loyal colleague.
Co-partner, partner in crime, William Revere.
Life partner.
Yes, life partner, perhaps.
Okay.
Let's get back to where
that particular lifestyle is actually talked about quite a bit in the book we're going to be referencing today.
Yes, it is.
We are going to be examining some specific chapters in the Old Testament, primarily dealing with stories.
Genesis,
yes, the book of Genesis, stories about giants and creatures called the Nephilim, which allegedly existed in ages past.
Right.
And I'm already concerned we are going to go over our time limit here, so we're just going to dive right into it.
Yeah, let's...
William, as our resident biblical scholar, why don't you provide a little background for those joining us about what's going on here?
Okay, so we have basically here this ridiculous idea that somehow there's giants, okay? And we literally mean giants, okay?
It's not a figure of speech.
It's
not a metaphor.
Metaphor or anything, okay? It's specifically referred to as giants in the Old Testament. Now, as we're all aware, there's groups of Christianity that take the Bible, New Testament and Old, verbatim, okay? So
is this the evangelical branch,
right?
Or
the branches of the evangelical,
it's not all of them, but like certain segments of
right,
it.
Right. And there's people that swear to it. This is the word of God, divinely.
Earth is 6,000 years old.
Right. And God spoke to the writers of the books, and etc. Now, we come across here specifically in Genesis 6:4, okay? And I'll go ahead and read this. Just let's get it out there and let's talk about it, okay? I'm using the New International Version of the Bible. That's the version I use for my scholarly purposes.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get right into it. All right. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown.
You said that word, Nephilim.
Yes.
What does that translate to?
Okay, literally that translates to what? Giants, okay? This is what...
That's Hebrew for giants. That's
yes.
Like ancient...
Yes.
I don't know if it was Aramaic or Hebrew, whatever the
Hebrew.
Language they spoke
This is Hebrew.
Okay.
So we have this bizarre type of statement that comes out of nowhere in Genesis. Basically, there's a creation story in Genesis, and out of nowhere, there's this talk of giants, and then it disappears. Yeah. So it's basically Genesis 6, verse 4,
yeah,
and then that's it.
Yeah, so like from what, if you just were to start in Genesis, it goes like straight from the Garden of Eden story, everyone knows that, into a long, kind of dull genealogy of like...
Right, the stuff that everybody
so-and-so
knows.
begat so-and-so, but what's interesting here is the lifespans
mm-hmm.
of each of these people. Like, starts out with, all the way at the beginning, with Adam. Adam lives 130 years.
Right.
And at that point, when he's 130 years old, he begot a son of his own and named him Seth. And after he begot Seth, I'm paraphrasing here.
Doesn't that sound like an evil name?
Seth. Oh, well, I can delve into that a little bit. A bit of scholarly stuff of my own. But the days of Adam were 800 years, and he had sons and daughters. So that all the days of Adam put together were 930 years, and then he died. And it's like this for like 2 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes straight into this bizarre passage about, my one says giants. It doesn't have the word Nephilim in it.
Right.
I'm using the King James.
Ah, the King James. That's the simpler version. Yes.
Oh, that's the dumbed down.
Yeah, that's for all the Anglicans.
Dumbed down for the Church of England.
Right. Exactly.
for Henry VIII.
Yeah.
Sitting with his 7th wife and a turkey leg.
Yeah, I believe they liked a more traditional translation. I'm not going to begin to tell you the differences, nor do I know them, but there's certainly differences between all the different Bibles that are out there. But
Sure. Well, let's get back on topic here. What are the Nephilim? What's going on here?
okay, the interesting thing that sticks out is this phrase, "sons of God." Okay, that's really bizarre because what are the sons of God? Okay, is that Adam? Is that angels? Is that followers of this God of the Old Testament? We don't really know, but there's a whole train of thought and a belief that these sons of God are actually fallen angels. Okay,
They're like angels that came down and basically banged women in the
exactly,
ancient Middle East,
exactly.
and their offspring were these giants.
Yes,
And these were like the legendary figures. That's what it means, men of renown.
yes.
Like, are they referring to like Goliath and characters like that?
That's certainly what scholars of this subject are pointing to.
Really?
Goliath. There's a couple of other specifically named giants, but kind of in biblical folklore. But I don't have those at the moment. But yeah, that's basically like you nailed it. These fallen angels or angels, whatever you want to call them, came down to earth and banged human women, and afterwards they produced the Nephilim, and they were supposedly, there's not exact measurements, but these are giants, so we're saying, probably 10, 12, 13 feet tall at least.
Okay.
And there's definitely people that think they're bigger.
Yeah. I just like how there's all this stuff in these bizarre things mentioned all matter-of-factly in the Bible as if they're talking about the weather or something. Yeah. And this version I have is meant for like kids in Sunday school. So there's all these little footnotes explaining like the theological concept, and there's just nothing, no reference to that at all, no footnote or anything.
Right.
It's just like, why judge sin? And he begot. What does the word begot mean? Here we just talked about angels having sex with humans and giving birth to giants, and it just pass it over, whatever, no big deal. And now it's right after that. If you're trying to find that Bible, the very next story is Noah building the ark.
Exactly.
So this is like right before the flood, and some of these videos I was watching for research that you recommended to me. That Stephen Quayle guy was a nut, by the way.
Oh, he's fucking nuts, but he's pretty brilliant on these types of subjects.
Wow.
Yeah, he's
in Europe. To see if we can get him on the show at some point. But
I'd love to have him on the show.
He said that part of the reason for the flood, it doesn't explicitly state this, but part of the reason the flood occurred was God wanted to get rid of these giants. They were just like going crazy and like killing people and just spreading evil and corruption. It says here, the earth was also corrupt before God. Earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt. All flesh had been corrupted their way on earth.
Right.
So what Quayle was arguing was that what he meant by that was that these God considered these giants just an abomination. Like they shouldn't have ever been existing. Yeah. Period.
And God basically pushes the reset button.
Yeah.
With the exception of Noah and the select few, I guess.
This big square boat.
Yes. That supposedly is on top of some mountain in like
Turkey.
Turkey.
Yeah, Mount Ararat. It's in like look, I found a satellite image of it on Google, but it's in like south northwest Turkey, sort of like on the border with Armenia.
And there's people that actually think that this is the ark that Noah built.
Well, there's another theory. Like have you heard the Black Sea flood theory?
No.
Like there's some evidence to suggest, and I don't remember who thought this up. You're gonna have to Google this.
Right.
But the Black Sea is only like not 8 or 9,000 years old,
Mm-hmm.
or 10,000 years old. It's like the oldest or the youngest like body of fresh water in the world. It's naturally occurring, and it was occurred like towards the end of the last ice age in a massive flood. So prior to that, like what is now the Black Sea was a big valley, and there were people living in there. And some people argue that this Noah figure was one of them, and that there was a sudden, rise in the sea level as the ice caps are melting, or the Mediterranean like flows over and just floods the whole valley. And to people living there, yeah, it would have seemed like the whole world was flooding. So it's possible some guy, 5,000 years ago, whatever, got in his boat, ended up on a mountaintop, which could very well have been submerged at that point. Because there are places I've heard about in Peru and all over the world where they find seashells on mountaintops, like marine life fossilized on mountaintops.
Fish.
Some people say like that's because in the Mesozoic era or whatever, those tectonic plates were much closer to those parts of the plates rather were much closer to the sea level, or they were underwater. So geological changes over time. But this theory, I'm not entirely convinced by it. It's a little too neat around the edges. It's a little too perfect. But
right.
All right, did you find anything?
No, not specifically.
And there was another flood theory I looked at. It basically had the same theory, but it was like in southern Iraq, like the Persian Gulf.
All right.
And it showed maps of what that area looked like towards the end of the last ice age. Obviously, the sea level is much lower.
Right.
Back then, it's like a couple, depending some places 200 feet lower than it is today. So people were living there is what is now the mouths of the Tigris, Euphrates rivers, and it's extending much further out into the Gulf. So yeah, once again, to people living there, if the sea level's rising dramatically, that would have seemed like the whole world was flooding at that point.
Yeah, so you have somebody who obviously doesn't understand the extent of the Earth at that point.
Sure, yeah.
His little micro universe is being flooded, so he thinks
exactly.
It's the end of the world.
They think like they've probably never journeyed more than X number of miles away from where they were born. The people lived in like tribal communities back then. It makes sense. But there's this whole idea. It seems like just kind of a recurring idea. Is whether it's the Nephilim or in these other cultures in the Middle East, like you have the Anunnaki theory.
And are the Anunnaki the giants?
Well, according to Saint Zachariah Stitchin, the Anunnaki were the aliens themselves.
The actual
or angels. Basically, that he's the father of the ancient astronaut theory, and what that is, it's pretty analogous to what we're talking about. Is that the gods of ancient civilizations, specifically the Sumerians, are actually extraterrestrials that visited Earth like tens of thousands of years ago, and they created humans, like genetically engineered humans from like some primitive creature, I guess a Homo erectus, and they created them as like a slave race to mine gold or something. And then eventually they left. This is like a
for resources to farm in Nibiru or something like that.
Yeah, it's
something.
Yeah,
something
that it was to harvest, to extract gold dust, to repair the atmosphere of their homeworld Nibiru. Now, how he actually ascertained all this stuff from a bunch of squiggly lines on a 6,000-year-old tablet, I don't know.
Could he be under the influence of something other than knowledge?
Psilocybin mushrooms, I would say. This was the Joe Rogan cast, but there's just such a similarity between that theory, which is the Anunnaki, which means those who from the heavens came to Earth, and the idea of the sons of God coming down and siring the Nephilim with the Earth women, and it's possible that that was the source of the Nephilim story, because a lot of the Old Testament books, like the early books in Genesis, like
Right.
the Garden of Eden, a lot of that stuff there's stories almost exactly like them in like Sumerian,
Right.
like
Right.
pagan
Right.
texts. And
And
what's
Babylonian
really
text.
interesting, yeah, if you, we're getting a little bit off topic here, but it's relevant. If you look in the very beginning opening
You've got the
pages
King James version, right?
of Genesis, well, yeah, but I think it says it in all of them.
What's it say?
You have the creation myth where God says, "Let there be light," blah 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 blah,
Right.
and then when it gets to the part where he's making humans, and then as this is Genesis book 1 verse 26, it says, "Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, birds of the air," blah 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 blah. But he says us, like plural.
Yes.
And a lot of some scholars say that's like this same text is almost identical to the Sumerian creation myth, and us refers to the Sumerian pantheon of gods, and they're saying this is basically lifted from the Sumerian text, and this was originally a pagan text, and the Jews, or the predecessors of the Jews, originally had multiple gods.
That's what I was just about to say. There's a whole school of thought that says that the Old Testament is basically a world of plural gods, because there's such a stunning difference between the Old Testament God and the New Testament God.
There is, yeah.
And it's references like that you just mentioned, like to us, and that makes people think that.
Yeah, it's like God got in a car accident, got brain damage. He's a totally different person after.
Exactly, yeah.
Except it's in real life, the person usually becomes worse afterwards. Except in this case, he kind of got better. The New Testament God's much nicer.
Yeah,
he's much more laid back.
Not destroying,
accommodating. Yeah, he's not flooding people, not turning people into pillars of salt.
Right. There's a badass sense to the Old Testament God. You don't fuck with him.
That is true. That is true. Everything got all mamby-pamby and hippie. Jesus was basically the world's first hippie.
Yeah, he
was.
And
that's the ironic thing, is because the Christian right in America hates the counterculture so much. Stop doing that. It's picking it up on the microphone. But they're like, these damn hippies, are hating on our heritage when Jesus stormed the beaches in Normandy in 1492. Like, no, if you look at how Jesus lived, he was basically the world's first hippie.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying this to defend the hippie subculture in America. I'm not a fan of those people. I'm just saying
he was also a radical too.
Yeah.
I mean, this was somebody who was rebelling against the government at the time.
Yeah.
Not directly, but anything that he was doing was taken as an offense to the state of Rome.
Yeah.
So
they were pissed at him because he didn't. They were hoping the Messiah was going to be like a
warrior.
Violent, a warrior, like a violent revolutionary, and then along comes this pacifist guy, just like, no, give unto Caesar what's Caesar.
Right.
And
that threw off the Jews.
What?
Some of them, they're looking for, like you said, they're looking for a badass warrior guy, and what they got was kind of this pacifist kind of who
well, this
totally different.
This depends on what gospel you're reading.
I mean, but for the most part, you could say that he wasn't out being violent. He wasn't out projecting thoughts that were against the state of Rome.
No, that was not what was going on there. But to get back to the Giants,
I got one thing I want to say about that.
What?
No, actually, you go ahead. You had a couple points.
Is this relevant to the
no
previous tangent, or
this something that comes up? Another actual New Testament reference, or sort of briefly discusses that, like we said before, in the Old Testament, there's this idea that the sons of man came down upon the women of the earth and basically raped them or had sex with them. I don't know if it was mutual then, but there's a line in Corinthians.
They didn't have yes means yes laws.
Exactly. They didn't have.
That is. I've looked all over Leviticus and Deuteronomy. I could not find yeseth mean yes in the ancient texts. I'm sorry, that's going to offend a lot of our feminist listeners, but
yes,
go right ahead.
There's a spot in
Corinthians,
anyway. First Corinthians 11, verse 7 through 10, and it specifically says it's making a reference to how men and women should behave. And it says, "For a man ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God, but woman is the glory of man." And then it goes on to say, "That is why a woman ought to have a veil on her head." And then it says this very odd part at the end, "because of the angels." That's another really bizarre thing that just comes out of nowhere.
Wait, so this is like...
And this is
you better cover your head because those angels might catch sight of you and they'll be like, "Oh, I want some of that."
Exactly. So it specifically says, "Cover her head because of the angels."
I guess in some Arab cultures they're still afraid of that. You know, Taliban too in Afghanistan.
Yeah, maybe that's why they're doing that. But it's interesting because Corinthians was written by Paul. And it must have been, I guess, popular culture at that time that the angels were still going to come down and rape women if they didn't have their heads covered. So it must have, if this was included in the letters to the Corinthians, then it must have been
much more common knowledge.
It must have been a real issue.
These passages and these like sort of obscure references in the Old Testament were not obscure to them. Like this was all like pretty common knowledge back then. This is like, for people to even know about this, they have to be listening to this podcast, or they have to go digging on their own, or watching the History Channel at 3 a.m. Like, back then, this was like something people heard about all the time when they went to the temple, or it was part of the folklore. People would talk about it, just stories growing up, or over the dinner table, or what have you. But getting back to like Stephen Quayle, he talks about he makes sort of a different distinction, because he insists that the Nephilim doesn't actually mean giants, even though I think he's wrong here, because that is what the word means, giants, Nephilim. Yes. But I take that back. It's up for debate. The version I read translates Nephilim as giants. Version he claims he has translates it as like the fallen ones. Nephilim literally means fallen ones in his translation, and the giants were the Raphaim.
Yes,
it's interesting. Yep, he's the only one that uses that word, so I'm not sure what to think of that. But
and Steve, he's an interesting guy. But just on a side note, it's interesting how these evangelicals, these type that can barely grasp the English language, are somehow supposed to be scholars of ancient Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew. I don't understand.
He's pretty articulate. I know I know the stereotype you're talking about.
You know what I'm saying.
He's a great Southern orator right there.
He does have a presence on the podium.
Yeah. But he talks a lot about the how these giants were all over the world. They were not. This wasn't just some bizarre
thing in the Middle East.
Yeah, he claims they were in North America as well, and that the Indians, a lot of different Indian nations. This wasn't just like one story from one tribe, the Sioux Nation or what have you. Like a lot of them that were not close to each other all have similar stories of these giant beings living in North America in like thousands of years ago. The stories are passed down, and this is where there's kind of two directions you can go with the conversation from this point. Is you can start talking about, you can get more into like the the theological aspects of it, like that one guy. We're gonna talk about him a little bit, like and he
Who's
makes,
that?
He's the guy with the long hair, and he talks
In
like
that video
this,
with
and
the
that
hand
kind of
movements
weird.
and everything.
Nephilim, the
Yeah,
true
yeah,
story of
Yeah,
Lucifer, fallen angels,
I
and
got
alien.
through about 10 minutes of that.
Yeah,
he turned it off.
he took it in a whole like.
He was
I
an
watched the
interesting
whole
guy,
thing.
Yeah,
It's sort of like it's sort of hypnotizing. Like you don't.
you
It's
don't
off.
realize
It's
you're
off.
10
It's
minutes
yeah.
in.
It's off-putting and hypnotizing at the same time. Is he's like. It's the weird hand gestures and the voice
and the clips
tone
in the background.
and just the way that it's shot too. Like
totally weird.
But he starts like segueing it into all these weird directions, like the Nephilim are actually aliens, but it doesn't contradict because aliens are actually demons. And here's all these other things that that illustrate that point. And that's I think we should do a separate show about that because you can go down the rabbit hole going into that.
Exactly.
But he also talks a little bit about these Native American myths of the giants in North America. And what's interesting about that is that there's apparently there were a lot of bones found in North America. And
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, like the Midwest in particular, like Wisconsin and Ohio, Tennessee, southern Midwest there.
In the 1800s and early 1900s.
Yeah, and before that too. So there's one of that, getting back to Stephen Quayle again. So this guy working for his website, like something with an A.
Right.
He did a 3-part special about the red-haired giants of North America. And they're only like 15 minutes long, so it's a quick watch.
Yeah.
But basically, he compiles a lot of these old newspaper clippings and like media accounts of these things, and he goes back even further than that. Like apparently, George Washington was there. Of course, the founding fathers were going to get tied into this.
Were they Masons?
Yes, but George Washington was a Mason.
No, I'm talking about the Giants.
Were the Giants Mason? I don't know.
Could they have been Masons? Part of the bigger Illuminati agenda.
That's where they keep the Giants now. All their bones are in the
they're under the Vatican
temples. Oh, okay.
That's pretty much common
knowledge. Yeah, what was I thinking?
Right.
But there, basically, there's a story that he was in West Virginia, like surveying some land, and he came across a giant, like thigh bone, and both Thomas Jefferson and some other guy investigated it separately. What was his name? William Harrison, and they concluded that it was a human skeleton as well. It was over 7 feet tall. And then what's really interesting is there's a bunch of other stories. It seems the majority of them come from the 19th century.
Yeah.
But one of them involved Abraham Lincoln. And you were about to say something, so I'll let you go on that while I get the quote up, because I want to read this verbatim. It's just mind-blowing. Go ahead. Just keep talking.
Here's what... I did look at a bunch of those newspaper articles, and I have done some research on the bones that they found, and it doesn't seem that far-fetched to find a person who's 7 feet tall. I mean, look at how many people that are almost 7 feet tall now.
That's just one example, though.
Oh, no. Like I'm just saying that, but I want to see the bones of somebody who's 15 feet tall.
Well,
I want to see 12. Something like that. Show me something huge.
Happy you should bring that up.
Oh,
because
that was a good segue, wasn't it?
as it elaborates in, or as it alludes to in that, Stephen Quayle video I was just talking about. A lot of these, there were stories left and right in the 1800s of people digging up these burial sites where they found these skeletons that were like 8, 9, 10, 12 feet tall. Human, male and female, skeletons. They were described as having some of them elongated skulls, some of them
Six
interesting.
digits.
Like there's double rows of teeth.
Yep.
And like you do see this like occasionally like a dental deformity in humans. You have like a set of teeth growing behind the other one, but this was like all of them
Yeah.
had that, and a lot of them you just said it had this 6 digits on each hand.
Right.
And his he mentions David Childress, that guy that's on the Ancient Aliens all the time.
Yes.
You know who he is.
Yes.
But in one of his earlier books, he talks about this, and he claims that the how gesture that aliens that Indians do.
Yes.
Indians were aliens too, but he says that gesture was originally developed as a way for strangers to greet each other. They would raise their hand so that they could make sure the other person was not a giant, or just like a small giant that wasn't fully grown. Because if they saw he had 5 digits and not 6, they'd be like, "All right, okay, everything's good. He's a person and not a giant."
Is there anything to back that up, or that just?
I think it's a pretty solid theory.
That's the reason why they do that.
Do you have a better idea?
It seems like a good purpose for their other hand when they were going like blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
I don't know.
That's racist. No. I think it's I'm not entirely convinced by it, but I think it has potential. And this fits in with the legends a lot of the Native American tribes that I mentioned earlier had. Like there was one particular tribe in New Mexico where they found like a
Paiute tribe.
I think that was them, but they found like it was in 1912, and this was the May 4th issue of the New York Times, 1912, and they found 18 9-foot-tall skeletons there. And the Indians in that area claimed that they belonged to an ancient race of giants that lived in that region. They had sort of pale skin.
Is it the red-haired?
Yeah,
ones?
they all had like long red hair.
Long red hair.
They had the 6 digits, the extra rows of teeth, and they were sort of pale skin. And they were saying things like, these. The white men today are like pygmies compared to them, as were we.
Now,
their civilization vastly surpassed us, but they also said that some of them were cannibals.
Yes. Like
this particular one was kind of a barbarous, I guess, subset of these giants, and eventually they fought for constantly, but eventually they managed to trap these people in a cave by lighting a fire. And I guess they just smoked them out because they ended up suffocating in there. But they found...
and that's where they found the bones in the cave.
Yes, they found the bones, and they were all intact. They had jewelry, pottery. They were fully clothed and stuff. I guess pretty arid conditions. It would preserve the bodies pretty well.
Right.
But eventually, you have to ask yourself, well, where are the bodies? Like you just said, why are none of them showing up? Because in that video alone, there were like 35, 40 stories, various media outlets talking about these bodies. I mean, this is like one story after another, to the point where it seems like this was pretty common knowledge that this was talked about in the 19th century, that, there were old giants living here ages past. This guy working for Stephen Quayle, Steve Albion,
right?
I think his name is, he claims that there were so many stories like this coming out that in 1881, Congress commissioned the Smithsonian Institution, gave him $5,000. Yeah, see, which $5,000 was a lot of money back then, to study the various sites, including a lot of them were found in the dirt mounds. Like some of them are kind of shaped like snakes, like the Ohio Serpent Mound, whatnot, to determine the origin of these mounds, as well as these skeletons, which were usually found near these mounds. Some of them were in caves like those other ones. and the expedition was led by a guy named Cyrus Thomas. They excavated over 2,000 mounds. He claims a lot of them were heavily damaged because they excavated about 2,000 mounds in a period of like 3 or 4 years. That's a lot of work done very quickly.
So they had a big crew.
Yeah.
This was taken very seriously.
Well, no, his argument is that it was done sloppily because they did so many excavations in such a short period of time. Like you know, I mean, I went to Pompeii in Italy a few years ago. They're still excavating that today. I mean, they found that decades ago, and it's like 2/3 of it's still not excavated.
Okay.
So
what
an excavation's supposed to take a long time, but his theory was that not only did they vandalize and damage a lot of the dirt mounds, but that when they found these skeletons, they decided that this was contradicting what was becoming the prevalent anthropological accepted history.
Yeah.
The
Darwinian thought process.
Humans evolved from apes, or hunter-gatherers. Then they developed into civilizations, Egypt and Sumeria, about 6,000 years ago, and things picked up from there. They're finding these bizarre skeletons that don't fit that narrative at all. And the what's being implied there is that they're not implied, strongly argued, is that these academics who built their careers espousing this one view of history are just it's too much of an affront to their work or to their ego or whatever to
admit to giants.
To admit that they might be wrong, even though there's giant, literally pun intended, giant fucking skeletons in front of them that contradict that story. So they just his argument is that because the Smithsonian was the one excavating all these sites, everything was just shipped away to the Smithsonian warehouse in DC, or like in their storage facilities underneath the museum in DC, which I've been to, by the way. Yeah, no sign of giants.
Wow.
But
and what, destroyed?
No,
hidden,
just hidden away. He compares compares it to like the warehouse at the end of the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
So there's like a big warehouse somewhere with,
or maybe distributed amongst Freemason temples across the
could be. They're
United States.
using the femurs to build the altars and whatnot.
Yeah.
But this is a lot to take in. My head was spinning. I watched like 8 or 9 of these videos. It's so easy to get sucked into this, and you have to sift through so much coal to find a diamond here. But like something's going on here. You have to. Yeah, you seem very skeptical, but like something. You got to admit something's
up here.
Yeah.
So what happened with this Abraham Lincoln quote? That's what I'm waiting for here. I've heard this story, and we're looking for a little meat and potatoes here. Did Abraham Lincoln see bones?
Yes, there's a long quote here. He's taught it. Again, this is mentioned in a matter-of-fact way, just like in the Bible, as if implying that this was common knowledge back then. He's talking about Niagara Falls.
Okay, upstate New York.
Yeah. He's like, when this is not all of the quote, but it's just like the sort of towards the end. When Columbus first sought this continent, when Christ suffered on the cross, when Moses led Israel through the Red Sea, nay, even when Adam first came from the hand of his maker, then as now, Niagara was roaring here. The eyes of that species of extinct giants whose bones fill the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara as ours do now.
Wow.
Contemporary with the whole race of men, older than the first man. Niagara is strong and fresh today as it was 10,000 years ago. The mammoth and mastodon, now so long dead that fragments of their monstrous bones alone testify that they ever lived, have gazed on Niagara.
Wow.
Abraham Lincoln said that. He was just like writing about, again, this is not about giants, this is about Niagara Falls. So this is him saying this in that way,
his personal
implies that, that this is
common knowledge.
Yeah, this is pretty common knowledge here. And what's also interesting about this that is in bold here is that one of the arguments that's put forward, like trying to debunk this whole theory of giants,
Yeah.
is that people in the 19th century, when they were digging these things up, were mistaking the bones of Ice Age mammals, specifically mastodons and mammoths. If you've ever seen a mastodon skeleton in a museum, it has this giant ass fucking femur. They were mistaking those bones for giant humanoid bones.
Because they look similar.
Yeah, because like taken in isolation, like not with the whole animal. Yeah, it kind of the femurs kind of look alike. But here, Lincoln is mentioning not just the giants, but also the mammoth and mastodon later in the same paragraph. So him saying that suggests that they knew very well what the difference between those two types of animals were: humanoids and members of the elephant family. They knew very well not to get the two of them mixed up. There's a clear difference between the two. And he's saying it flat out. He's not mincing any words here. So that ancient species of extinct giants whose bones fill the mounds of America. That's pretty black and white right there.
I was going to say, too, you could have made, a stretch saying that he meant giants in a, metaphorical way or something. I don't know. Elevating man or something to that extent, but he literally says
See, there's a reason I read the whole paragraph there, as I didn't want.
Bones fill the mounds of America. So that goes to show you that there was this movement to try and excavate and unearth these bones in the United States.
Yeah.
Or
Well, I just said, the Smithsonian Institution is digging this up. And the theory is that, like, the Smithsonian institution, wherever it is they keep their stuff that's not on display, this is like the Area 51 of anthropology.
Maybe they're all stored in the same spot.
Yeah, that's the idea. It's similar, just like Area 51, UFOs and alien bodies. Here they have giant skeletons and artifacts and stuff that they're denying exists.
And what do you think the people do? Who's in charge? That's what. Whenever we talk about this kind of stuff, who makes the orders to say, "All right, let's capture this stuff. Let's bring it here." Who are the truck drivers that pull up to this place?
They don't know what's in it. That stuff's all boxed up.
I know, but who do they hire to initially go there and make the find?
This is my thoughts on this. There's all kinds of secret operations that go on in various industries. People have to sign like non-disclosure agreements.
Right.
That's not that outlandish a thing that people have to sign something to like you are not to talk about what you do here.
Like the workers at the Denver airport.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, all right. Let's not open that can of worms here tonight.
Maybe next episode we'll get into that.
Yeah, we can do that next episode. I'm actually going to Denver in August for a wedding.
Are you flying in there?
Yes, I'm going to get some video of it. I'm bringing the camera.
I'll get the murals.
I'm going in. I'm getting the murals
and the Masonic symbols.
The cornerstone as the date.
It also has the. I believe it has I believe it has the chemical equation for smallpox or something like that.
What?
Yes.
I haven't heard this at all.
Yes.
I'm load up
so there's all sorts of theories about the next Ebola will be smallpox.
I'll see if I can sneak into the gas chambers and the subterranean layers down there. You got to take a photo of the apocalyptic horse.
Yes, the blue-eyed pony or whatever it is with the laser beam eyes.
Yeah, it has red eyes.
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. Anyway,
God, what were we talking about?
Fuck. No. But people we were talking about
the workers and whatnot.
Yeah, that's pretty common in various industries. Workers have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. You're not to talk about what you do here. You're paying, and the worker probably thinks to himself, I'm being paid $200,000 or whatever. They don't want me to talk about. I'll just shut the fuck up and play by the rules. It is in my best interest to just agree to do this. But they're incentivized in such a way that they're not going to break the rules.
Or they're killed shortly thereafter.
There's that too. But, I mean, it's entirely plausible that, there's rank and file people doing the mundane tasks associated with this stuff.
But what's the
But who's-
ultimate goal here? What's the point of covering this up? Why would the powers that be want this information?
That's what I'm a little on the fence about. Is that like we've agreed that they had the opportunity and the means to do it, to like dig up ancient like giant bones and to hide them. What is I'm a little fuzzy about is why are they doing it? And the theory that was presented, like I said, is that because this contradicts the established historical narrative that they've been espousing for years, and that they don't want to rewrite the history books, and it's just too much for them.
That just seems ridiculous. I
kind of think that too, until I think about, if you see how Egyptologists react when someone like Robert Bauval or Graham Hancock proposes an alternate theory about Egyptian history, like the water erosion on the Sphinx.
Yeah.
But
this is totally
no.
different.
No. It's the same principle at work. It's for people who don't know about this. There's water erosion on the Sphinx, and this is very obvious for anyone who knows anything about geology. There is a geologist from MIT, I can't remember his name, that proved this, that there is significant water erosion on the side of the Sphinx, and he concluded, studying it, that the only thing that could have caused this was prolonged water rainfall, just because of the type of erosion. But the last time Egypt had a climate that could have provided that sort of rainfall was over 10,000 years ago. So logically, you have to conclude that the Sphinx is over 10,000 years old. They showed this. He showed photographs of the Sphinx, like with just showing the erosion, and he like blacked out like the face and the paws so that you couldn't tell what you were looking at. He showed it to geologists and asked them, well, what do you think caused this? And they said the same thing. It was like, this looks like rainfall caused this. And he's like, all right, I played a little trick on you. And then he shows them the rest of the photo. And all these other people, they all have jobs in academia like him. They're all just like, oh, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole.
Why? I don't understand
because
why.
There is a certain... There is a closed-mindedness in academia. There is a certain doctrine that if you deviate from, you will be ostracized and it will ruin your career. Unless you're like a tenured professor and they really can't fuck with you, like that's a very real risk if you work in the academic field, which is why most of these people, like, the David Childresses and the Graham Hancocks of the world, they come from outside academia because they don't have an academic career to lose,
and that's why they're not respected either. They come out.
That's why a lot of the Egyptologists, like, they won't debate them and stuff. Like this guy from MAT, he's a PhD, so they had to debate him. They couldn't just dismiss him. I watched the debate; it was very good.
Yeah.
But getting back to the Nephilim and the giants, like, it's the same thing at work there. Like, it's the in this case anthropologists and paleontologists, I guess, they don't want to see their whole field turned upside down. They have a certain doctrine of history that they're very invested in. Their entire career, possibly their sense of identity is built around that. They don't want to have to, admit we might have been wrong or we might have missed something for the last, 40 years that I've been working in this field. And his contention is for Quayle's guy's contention is for that reason. This is why this knowledge is suppressed. A lot of that first documentary we watched that's really good is called Giants Suppressed Archaeology.
Yeah. For
that reason. And I think, we've already seen this phenomenon in other fields. Why shouldn't it be happening here?
I don't think this is something. Here's the other thing that you got to think about. Just because they're giants doesn't mean they're intelligent. Okay, you could have a gorilla that you have very large gorillas.
Sure.
And just because they're large doesn't mean that they're a different breed and they're able to think and they have intelligence. The skeletons,
that are described here are basically human looking. They're just of enormous stature.
Right,
Like,
but
a gorilla's skeleton looks very different than a human.
what I'm saying that they're afraid of the giants somehow screwing with the status quo of anthropology. But I don't think that it does really. Could it just be a different, type of humanoid creature? I don't know. Doesn't mean that they were intelligent. Did they live in the woods and eat their own shit? I don't know. We don't know anything about them. I don't think. I think there has to be a bigger reason for a cover up, and I think it's connected to the Anunnaki. I think it's connected to alien technology.
Oh, okay.
I think
Here I am thinking you were being all like Mr.
No,
hold on, let's bring this down to earth, and you just took it way further than I did.
Professor's ego is not a good enough reason to suppress this kind of knowledge. There has to be some sort of Luciferian agenda behind this. There has to be. I believe, and there's a popular school of thought amongst scholars of this subject too, that these giants are related to the Anunnaki. They're related to aliens of some sort.
I'm with you there. I think the same phenomenon was being described. Something happened where
aliens came down.
I think they have their source in the same common story, like a same root story. And it's entirely possible that it was describing an actual event, like something came down from the heavens, whether they were aliens, angels, or what have you.
Yeah.
Genetically manipulated humans, or maybe they did fuck with human women. Who knows? And that's where this short-lived race of giants came from. I think that's entirely possible. And
that's
go ahead.
There's obviously you've seen Ancient Aliens, and they like to go through Bible verses and see how someone writing in that time period would describe
Ezekiel,
ancient aircraft and stuff like that. Yeah. Maybe these Anunnaki people are larger humanoid creatures, and they're just a much bigger version of us. I don't know, but there has to be a bigger reason than like I said, professors' egos to cover this up. I think the Smithsonian is in conjunction or in cahoots with the Vatican, who knows the Vatican knows that there's something else out there. They know that there's something coming soon, and I think it's a way to keep people.
You're gonna segue this
bay.
Into the exo-Vaticana stuff.
Well, yeah, but look, the Vatican and religious groups need to keep people content on Earth, okay?
Sure.
And they need to keep people in this idea that we're the only intelligent life form out there, and anything else could threaten our Christian belief.
Well, the Vatican has kind of revised their opinion about that in recent years.
Right, because something's coming.
I see what you did there.
On top of the mountain in Arizona, they can see it.
Yeah, the Lucifer telescope. I want to do a whole episode about the Vatican alien.
I think so.
Connection, and since there's apparently giants living in pits under the Vatican,
I'm not prepared to discuss that in detail.
I don't want to give away any of your sources. I don't want to endanger anyone.
That's the thing. We can't discuss that. I'll mention briefly that in an interview that I came across, there was a discussion that underneath the Vatican there was a group of gentlemen, leaders, celebrities who all met underneath the Vatican City, and a witness describes seeing the President of the United States, President of France, and Hugo Chavez, among others, there sacrificing a child to a giant underneath the Vatican.
Like offering it up on a plate for the giant to eat
correct.
Or something?
That's correct.
Okay.
All completely true. Okay.
Complete. Okay.
This is fact.
Once again, I think you're being the voice of reason, and then you take it so much further than I was ever planning to take.
This stuff, like I said, we're going to get into that in the next episode, hopefully.
Yeah, I do want to, before we run out of time, I do want to mention one other detail that I think is significant to this, is that, and this is a little bit more down to earth scientific, and it has to do with the oxygen levels on the earth. And it's a generally undisputed fact, no matter where you stand on this whole thing. If you think this whole show is bullshit that we just talked about, you will have to admit that if you just look at fossils, go to the museum or look this up online, just animals in general were much larger in ages past than they are today. Like animals living on Earth, even from dinosaurs, obviously, even going into the mammalian age, like mammoths, the rhinoceroses, the giants, hippos, the giant ground sloth. It was like 8 feet tall, weighed 1,000 pounds. Just animals in general were just so much bigger. And you go way, way back, like hundreds of millions of years, you see the dragonflies with like 6-foot wingspans, and 10-foot long centipedes. And this isn't like lunatic fringe stuff. Like the mainstream biologists, paleontologists all say that this is true. The wrecked fossils prove it.
Why is it true?
But
what's the reason?
Part of the theory is that the oxygen levels on the Earth were much higher back then. The atmosphere was much more oxygen rich. The atmosphere right now is only like 24% oxygen. Most of it's nitrogen. So like proportionately, there was more oxygen back then. And the ozone layer was much thicker, which shielded a lot of the radiation from the sun out. And because of this, it caused animals to grow much larger. And they were actually able to replicate this in the experiment. They showed this in that documentary is called Giants Suppressed Archaeology. Yeah, and they proved that this is true. They created an artificial environment in a fish tank where they got these fish to grow to like 5 times their normal size because they artificially thickened the ozone layer in this room. And the genes just flourished and they just grew to an enormous size. So the argument in that video was like, if this is occurring in all these other animals, would it not occur in humans as well? And that's not that far-fetched. I mean, anatomically modern humans have been around for 200,000 years. This is within that time frame. They argue that the ozone layer was like 3 times thicker back then than it is today. And there are the hole in the ozone layer over Antarctica, so it's pretty accepted that there's issues with the ozone layer today.
Now, what if we kept a baby in one of those
1/7? Would that be like a giant baby in a terrarium?
What if we could recreate a giant baby in a terrarium?
That'd be insane.
Yes.
Like
someone should do
guests come over the house. There's like a 8-foot tall baby crawling around your house.
That would be interesting. Maybe the Vatican could do experiments on like children that they steal from the Native American orphanages in Canada, instead of giving them to sacrifices underneath the Vatican
way
churches.
To baptize them.
Yeah,
they disappear.
Exactly. Instead of killing them or sacrificing them, maybe we could put one in a terrarium. Yeah. I'll see if I can get in contact with some of the Jesuits I know.
Adopt a baby and raise him in a terrarium.
Exactly. Yeah, why not? Experiment.
Interesting visits from CPF. Just use the reasoning you just explained right now. Oh, say we're actually creating an ozone layer in this room here. Get on the ground! Put your hands where I can see them! Okay, we are just about out of time here. We're just about at an hour.
Wow.
Dr. Revere, I think you've earned your doctorate with this episode. Do you have any closing thoughts about this? The thickening of the ozone layer, the biblical booty calls going on in the Old Testament. What do you
I guess I'll end
think
with
of all this?
This is something that needs to be brought to the mainstream. If there are Bible thumpers out there, why aren't they talking about giants? And not just Bible thumpers. this is something that should be discussed prominently in schools. You know, this is a fact that there's bones being found all across the United States, and what are we going to do
other parts
about
of the world too.
Yeah,
It's
what
not
are we
just
going
the
to do
U.S.
about it? We need to challenge the mindset and the status quo that we're the only people here. And for God's sakes, Abraham Lincoln talked about giants. So
Honest
why can't
Abe.
we? Yeah.
Honest Abe lying? I don't think he is.
I don't fucking think so. So, how about you? What do we got?
I'm with you.
Closing thoughts.
I think there's definitely something to this. I think this is a topic we're going to be revisiting a lot on this show. Every culture in the world has some sort of myth about giants. There's numerous cultures, too few for it to be a coincidence. There are too many for it to be a coincidence about these angelic beings, breeding with humans and creating these hybrid life forms. I think that's the source of these myths of giants in the Bible, titans in ancient Greece.
Yep.
These demigod things like
yep.
like Hercules, Perseus, whatnot. I think did it go down verbatim exactly how it's written? Probably not. Is there something factual that inspired all this?
Probably.
Almost definitely. Almost definitely.
Well, with that being said,
that's all I got, folks.
Let's wrap this up, and this has been another episode.
This is the Robcast, episode 2. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week. Another exciting topic. We might do the Denver airport. We haven't settled on a topic yet.
Yeah,
but
I'm thinking we should do something modern. Something, we delve into Old Testament this time.
In and out. Yeah, with the modern police state, New World Order stuff.
Yeah, I'm thinking we got to get back into that flavor. And
Asian aliens.
And let us know what you guys want to have us investigate next, and we're gonna take your comments seriously.
Yep.
So we look forward to hearing from you guys.
Yep.
And with that being said, I guess this is William Revere signing out.
Yeah. Prometheus here. Thanks for joining us. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button, join our channel, and let us know what you want to hear about. Want us to investigate? Leave a comment in the section. Go to our website. Tell us what you want us to talk about, and we will look into it. It's Prometheus signing off. This is Robcast. Good night.